I'd like to start with a story. Addison was an 8-year-old little boy. He was as blonde as could be. He had a quirky sense of humor. He loved to build. He loved Legos. And the other thing he loved was Spider-Man. He loved all things Spider-Man. Addison also was a very thin little boy. He was pale, and he had a cough that literally racked his body. I had never seen or heard anything like it in my life. You see, Addison had cystic fibrosis, and I was his brand new, newly minted nursing student. It was all new to me. Addison had had a good day. So grateful for that. He actually made it to the playroom. He was able to build some battleships with Legos. He also had all of his treatments for his lungs, for his respiratory system. And he also was able to make it through what I considered like a mini mountain of medication. And he was able to take that with this special applesauce with a lot of extra cinnamon that his mother had made for him. And together, his mother and I helped him get through the day. He had had a lot of activity that day, and he was getting tired, so he needed to rest. So he climbed into his bed. We tucked him in with, of course, the Spider-Man comforter, and he went off to sleep, drifted off to sleep. And I thought to myself, I was so happy for him. He had had a good day. Addison had had a great day. And of course, as the new nursing student, I thought, he had a good day, I had a good day. I breathed a sigh of relief. That was until his mother asked me the question. She simply said to me and asked me, can we talk? Well, I have to tell you, my first thought was, about what? I kept thinking to myself, there's a lot of people in this hospital that know a lot more than I do. I felt so unprepared. I was trained as a doer, you see. I did not feel particularly comfortable or capable when it came to these kinds of conversations. But I have to tell you, I had the good sense that day to sit down, and I basically listened. And Addison's mother went on to tell me some wonderful stories about her son. I felt so privileged to hear them. She told me what she was worried about. She was worried that the medications weren't as effective anymore, that it took him longer and longer in the hospital to get better. But she also shared with me her hopes. Of course, she hoped for a cure for cystic fibrosis. And the thing that she was most hopeful for was that Addison's third-grade friends would always stick by him, that they would always include him to birthday parties and never leave him out. That was what she hoped for the most. That day, I learned some very important lessons. I learned that, first of all, how important it is to tell your stories, to be listened to, and to be known. And I didn't really think that I was maybe the best person to be doing this conversation or listening, but I was called upon that day. I learned that that day I was called upon to be present, not perfect. And Addison and his mother set me on a path that day that really has been my entire career, and that is to help foster these kinds of conversations across what people feel is a divide where we have to be perfect, and to help healthcare people to feel more confident and comfortable in these conversations. So that is what I've dedicated myself to. What I'd like to do now is to fast forward a little bit and share with you a time in my life when I was a patient. And I want to invite every single one of you here in the audience to think of a time when you were a patient or someone in your life was a patient, and to go there with me. It was a happy time in my life. I was pregnant for the third time, and my husband and I were very, very hopeful that this pregnancy was going to take. You see, we had suffered 2 miscarriages before this, but we still were hopeful that this one, yes, we had a baby. So with this news, I went to the clinician, and I'm hoping that I'm going to hear the baby's heartbeat. It was very early, and the clinician said, look, it's okay, don't worry about it. It's really early. We'll try again next week. So we tried again next week. Now this time I didn't quite understand it, but there was something wrong with the battery in the Doppler machine, so they couldn't really hear the baby's heartbeat. So again, I leave the office thinking, uh-oh, and the fear is starting to creep up on me. I go for the next week, for the 3rd visit now. And again, now I'm really getting myself kind of worked up, and I'm worrying, uh-oh, is this going to happen again to me, my husband? And I explained this to the clinician, and I said, I'm worried. I really feel like I need to hear the baby's heartbeat. We didn't hear it that time. I said, I really think I need an ultrasound. I'm worried. And she said, well, I'm not worried. And I said, but I am. And I said, please, I think I need this. And she said, well, okay, we'll order up an ultrasound for you. But I'm just going to put down because of maternal anxiety. I thought I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought, really? I mean, you really can't understand why I would be nervous, why I would be anxious? But I said, whatever. I just wanted the ultrasound. So, okay, so I find myself within a couple of hours in the ultrasound suite, in that position, in a hospital gown, flat on my back. And I am watching this radiology technician's face like a hawk. Right? You guys, you've been there, some of you. And it's absolutely expressionless. I can't tell, good news, bad news. But I have to tell you, the longer I'm not getting any good news, just by virtue that I'm not getting good news, I'm starting to think the worst. So I say to her, I broke the silence, I said, can you tell me anything? I said, can you see my baby's heartbeat? Is my baby okay? I'm kind of expecting, yeah, there's the heartbeat, there's a little arm, there's a little leg, and there was like none of that. And then she said those fateful words. She said, well, the doctor will call you with the results. She said, but there is one thing I can tell you. Really? What? Anything. And she said to me, I want you to know that you did a really great job filling up your bladder for the test. And I thought to myself, really? And I thought, is this good news or bad news? And of course, honestly, I knew it was bad news. Because I thought, if the best thing that is happening about today is that I could fill up my bladder, this is not good news. And in fact, over the telephone, from a doctor who I didn't know, I found out that I had had my 3rd miscarriage. And of course, I was heartbroken. I felt like a failure. The next morning, I found myself in an operating room. Now we're going to have the procedure. And I thought, okay, I was very nervous about this, very fearful. On the operating table, I see like sort of a semicircle of surgeons and nurses, and all in their surgical scrub suits and their caps. And I saw the clinician, the maternal anxiety clinician. And I so had hoped that she would come over to me and talk to me, maybe comfort me, tell me what to expect. Tell me maybe she was sorry for what I was going through. But that didn't happen. And I just felt it such a loss that I didn't have that opportunity. And I thought, how sad for her that she wasn't able to do that either. And again, it was a note to self about how important these conversations are. But I have to tell you, I had an anesthesiologist who was behind me. I never did see the man's face. But he put his hand on my shoulder, he squeezed my shoulder, and he talked to me in his left ear. And he said to me, I will be with you the whole time. That I will watch over you. And he said, we'll get you through this. Those words sustained me, I have to tell you. The next thing I knew, I'm like strapped down like this. And I would say, hey, wait a second, wait until the patient is sedated before you do that. It was really scary. I felt very fearful. There was a nurse on the left-hand side of me who said, give me your hand. You bet your life I took that hand and I squeezed it. little strange because she had a glove on. It felt a little plastic. But, it was a human hand, and it was warm. That was the other thing I remember. It was warm, and she squeezed it as hard as I was squeezing her. And the next thing I knew, the medications did their work. I drifted off. And here I am, talking to you. Those experiences really stayed with me. So what I'd like to do now is to, with that as backdrop, to really talk to you about a philosophy that I have come to with my colleagues. I like to think of it as the one-room schoolhouse. And in this one-room schoolhouse, we bring together physicians, nurses, social workers, psychologists, chaplains, medical interpreters, and we bring them together with patients and with family members. We leave our badges at the door, and we learn together about these kind of conversations, what matters. And I've learned from the families that years later, it isn't the medications or the surgeries, the treatments that they remember. What they really remember is the words that we said to them, our kindness that we extend, how we made them feel, and the way we treated them. That's what stays with people. That is the crucible of the whole experience. So this is what we learned in the one-room schoolhouse. I have learned through my own training as not only a nurse, but as a clinical psychologist. I mentioned a lot of doing, and so much of our experience and our training is focused on the technical aspects of care, the clinical excellence, which absolutely we all need. We all want. We expect that. But the one-room schoolhouse is about the other half of the medical equation. It's about the emotional standard of care. So I want to show you what happens inside of this one-room schoolhouse. On the left, your right, my left, is one of our physicians, one of our learners, and she is actually with two of our actors. We work with actors. They're really coached by our family members and our patients. And she's getting the opportunity in a way to try this on for size, how to introduce herself. A lot of times in the hospital, people will say, hi, I'm GI, I'm renal, I'm cardiac. And, you got to start with where they're at. Not really. You may be, I'm Dr. Elaine Meyer, I'm a clinical psychologist, I work here in the pediatric intensive care unit. So you start with wherever the person is at. So the way you introduce yourself, sitting down. When you sit down, even if you only have 5 minutes, it seems like so much better. It's of higher quality. This doesn't have to be about a healthcare conversation. This is a conversation in life that's important, right? Just sit down. Lean into it, as you can see. She's touching this person. Now, there's something happening here. This could be any kind of a difficult conversation. It could be about a new diagnosis. It could be that maybe they're hearing about a miscarriage. They could be hearing about a medical error, where this clinician might be talking to them, apologizing to them, or talking to them about what we're going to do to make this right, to help make this situation whole again. So this is the kind of thing that happens inside of the one-room schoolhouse. The other thing in the one-room schoolhouse is that practice makes better. Practice doesn't look perfect, especially in this art form of conversation like this. Again, being called upon to be present, not perfect. You all know these guys, right? This is like one of the best mnemonics because everybody knows the Wizard of Oz. Right? And so what are the ingredients of these kind of difficult conversations? What I'd like to do is share with you a way that I like to think about them. Remember the lion? He was after courage. So what I would say to you is never, ever underestimate the power of your courage, your leadership, your willingness to go there with a patient, with a loved one. This is not just about healthcare conversations. This is in life. All right? Carl Rogers, the great psychotherapist, teaches us that one anxious person in the room is enough. You know what that means? That you have to be that non-anxious person, that calm, non-anxious person, or to try to be. Again, just as I did with Addison's mother, I sat down and I listened. I did the best I could. Okay? What about Scarecrow? What was he after? Remember? He wanted rain. So this would be the information that you have to share, the knowledge, your clinical experience, your wisdom. Okay? Very important. If you were newly diagnosed with prostate cancer or diabetes, you certainly really would want a clinician in front of you that could explain what was happening in terms that you could understand, that wouldn't scare you, that wouldn't frighten you, that would help you feel like, I can get through this. We can get through this. You know, just a little example, I work with a lot of kids, and sometimes we may say things like, we're going to put you on a stretcher. Well, the kid may say, ouch. You know, I stretch? I don't want to be stretched, right? You may not, and so this is the scarecrow part that we learn about, our word choice. So I might say to that child, instead of, I'm going to put you on a stretcher, right? I may say something like, look, we're going to put you on a little bed that has wheels, and then we'll be able to take you where you need to go. Right? So that's the brains, the word choice. Okay? And what about Tin Man? Remember what he went to Oz for? Heart. The heart is the little kindnesses that we can extend every day, the compassion, the mercy that we can show people, especially people who are hurting or suffering or ill. Okay? Maya Angelou, the great American poet, teaches us that in order to survive, a human being needs to live in a home furnished with hope. So many of these conversations are about hope. They're about learning to sort of just ask a question like, what's on your mind? What's worrying you? How can I be helpful? What are you hoping for? You get the idea. What I'd like to do is share with you just a really brief story about how this all came together for what I would call a very reluctant learner to the one-room schoolhouse. This was a clinician who really didn't want to have these conversations at all. He had joined the emergency medical transport team. So he just thought, well, wow, I'm just going to bypass having these conversations altogether. I'm not with people very long, all right? Well, it was a good plan, but it didn't quite work that way. And after he had spent some time with us in the one-room schoolhouse, he was called on an emergency transport to an emergency room with a 14-day-old baby girl. The rest of the team rushed over to the baby girl, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw the father at the foot of the baby's bed, and he was saying, come on, little lady. Come on, little lady. And the mother was in the corner of the room crying, alone. And he said sort of effortlessly, he found himself walking in that direction. He said, I just couldn't believe that I felt like I could do this. And then the next thing he did was he knelt down next to the mother and he took her hand. He didn't sit, he didn't stoop, he knelt. He realized that this was making a mistake. And he went on to explain to that family what was happening to their baby girl, who unfortunately had severe dehydration and was having a cardiac arrest. It was extremely scary. And that family thanked him and the team afterwards. And he said, well, I didn't do anything. The team did everything. And I said, oh, no, you have to see it. So many times people sort of naturally devalue the conversations that we have and think it's all about, the procedures and the action. And he learned that day that it was really about being present, not perfect, and to going there with the patient. So coming full circle here, what I'd like to do is to share with you a piece of my inspiration. That's a lot younger me, and that's my little boy. And all I have to do is think about him and all the people who helped bring him into the world. And I've got my inspiration to know why these conversations matter and to keep having them in my world, in my work. And I encourage every single one of you that's sitting in these seats today or listening to this to dig deep, find your taproot, find your inspiration, so that you too can have these kind of conversations with people who you're taking care of and that you love. And I'd like to give and close with just this last message for you. Once upon a time, you wanted to change the world. And I want to tell you that you still can, one conversation at a time. Thank you.
So when I was growing up, there was this song we used to sing on the playground, and it went like this. Tracy and so-and-so sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby in a baby carriage. And I'm like, okay, that's it. That's how you do life. That's how you do a relationship. Love, marriage, baby carriage. Okay, got it. And then I grew up, And this is what my life turned out to be. Slightly more complicated. Right? Love, marriage, divorce, dry spells. Love, marriage, co-parenting, another marriage, another divorce. You get the picture. So if you're good at math and or a fast reader, what you got there is that I've been married 3 times. Yep, 3. And divorced. And what that's supposed to mean is that I am a total failure at relationships. And that is one way to look at it, but not the only way. Because what I think really happened is that I kept marrying the wrong person. Now, it's not that I didn't, it's not that I chose bad guys. My first 2 husbands were amazing men who are now married to wonderful women who aren't me. And my 3rd husband, well, we're friends on Facebook now. So all's well that ends well, right? After the collapse of my 3rd marriage in 2005, I realized that I had been marrying everyone in sight except the one person that I really needed to marry in order to have a great relationship. And that once I married that person, all of my relationships would be successes, even the failures. The so-called failures, actually. So since we're talking today about women inventing, I want to talk about inventing relationship. And what I've found through a lot of trial and obviously many, many, many errors to be the thing that has transformed my life in love. And that is this idea of marrying yourself. So what does it mean to marry yourself? It's a big idea. It's as big as marriage itself, except if I could just summarize it, it would be that you enter into a relationship with yourself and then you put a ring on it. In other words, you commit to yourself fully. And then you build a relationship with yourself to the point where you realize that you're whole right now. That there's no man, woman, job, circumstance that can happen to you that's going to make you more whole, because you already are. And this changes your life. So by now I'm sure at least some of you are wondering why you should be listening to a 3-time divorcee talk about marriage, even to herself, and I understand that. And here's what I have to say about that. Is that what I've learned, and my experience is that the places where you have the biggest challenges in your life become the places where you have the most to give, if you do your inner work. I kind of want to say that again. The places where you have your biggest challenges are the places where you have the most to give. So let me tell you a little bit about the person I truly needed to marry, myself. I'm from Minneapolis. My mom was a prostitute and an alcoholic. She put me in foster care when I was 3 months old. My dad was a criminal. He was a drug dealer and a pimp with a heart of gold. Actually, they both had hearts of gold. And he spent more or less my whole life in prison. And he just got out of prison after his most recent sentence, which was 20 years. And I spent, until the age of 9, I was in probably 24 foster homes. And the thing you need to know about this story, because there's like a lot of details, obviously, but the thing you need to know is that I came out of that childhood with one goal: to never be left. And the way I was going to do that is that I was going to get married. That was the way I was going to accomplish that goal. So I got married the first time to a guy I met when I was 17. We got married a couple years later. When I was 19, he was a really good guy from a great family. He had an MBA. I mean, it was like, it was like marriage material. And, I was thrilled. I was like, I have a family. I belong somewhere. This is wonderful. And then after 5 years, I left him. And then 10 years later, I got married again to another wonderful guy who's the father of my now 16-year-old son. We still have a wonderful relationship. He's a really good guy. But after 4 years, I left him too. And I'm not proud to say that I did that, but in order to really marry yourself, you have to get sometimes very painfully honest with yourself about what it is that you've done. So I'm not proud of that. And then 8 years later, I got married again when I was 40. And I was like, okay, this feels right. Okay? Let me tell you what felt right to a girl who was in 24 foster homes. A guy who started to date after 9 months of marriage. Essentially, he started dating a 21-year-old girl. Which you're like, okay. I mean, it would be funny if it weren't so tragic. You have to have a sense of, that's why, we're Facebook friends. So, here I am, looking at this person that I just described with a terrible track record of relationships, and I'm like, I'm supposed to marry her? Like, this is the woman you want me to marry? And the answer is yes. Because here's the deal. The thing about marrying yourself is that it's not just like cohabitating. You're not just going to date for a while and see how it turns out. You are going to do this till death do you part. You're going to take vows. So here are the vows. Number 1, you're going to marry yourself for richer or for poorer. This means you're going to love yourself right where you are. You don't say to yourself, when you get to the corner of Hollywood and Vine, then I'll marry you. You don't say, when you lose 10 pounds, then I'll love you. And you don't say, if you hadn't married that loser, I would love you, but since you did, I'm sorry, I think it's over. When you marry yourself, you walk yourself down that aisle exactly where you are. And paradoxically, I've found that loving myself exactly where I am is the only way to get where I'm going. Number 2, you're going to marry yourself for better or for worse. So what this means, it's like most of us are willing to love ourselves for better. I mean, sure, like, I'm having a great hair day today. I love me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for worse, like the big life disappointments. Maybe you don't own a home. You didn't get the career you wanted. Maybe you didn't graduate from college. Maybe you didn't get the relationship you wanted. Maybe it hasn't turned out. Maybe you fight with your mom. Maybe you watch too much reality TV. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Because when you marry yourself, you agree to stay with you no matter what. So 3rd, you marry yourself in sickness and in health. So what this means is that you forgive yourself for your mistakes. A mistake isn't actually a failure unless you don't learn from it and unless you don't grow. There's a saying, you ask for patience and what you get is a line at the bank. And what that means is that life does not give you what you asked for. It gives you the people, places, and situations that allow you to develop what you asked for. And the thing is that if you don't get it right the first time, life will give it to you again. Because life is very generous that way. It's like, I didn't get it the first time in the first marriage, and I didn't get it the second time. It's like, okay, maybe the 3rd time I'll get it. So inside that terrible experience of that 3rd marriage, I learned something about in sickness and in health. And what I learned is how to sit by my own bedside and how to hold my own hand and how to nurse myself and how to comfort myself. And what I learned is that I am a person that I can count on. Last but not least, you marry yourself. When you marry yourself, it's to have and to hold yourself. So what does it mean to have and to hold? Well, I think it means that you love yourself the way you want someone else to love you. I had always been going through life like with this sense of lack. I felt like I was kind of half a person and that I was missing something. And I went into my relationships hoping to solve this feeling that I'd had my entire life, that I wasn't whole unless someone loved me. And the truth was, is that I wasn't ever going to feel whole until I learned to love myself. So this business of marrying yourself transforms every area of your life, your business, family relationships, kids, social relationships, friends. Because when you marry yourself, this huge thing happens. You become able to love in this whole new way. You become able to love other people right where they are for who they are, the same way you're already loving yourself. And of course, this is what the world needs more of. So when I married myself and I realized that I already had everything I needed, I started seeing it as my job to basically just light up my little corner of the world. You know, that's my new job. Because I don't need anything, I already have it. So when I take meetings, it's all about like, how can I help this person achieve her goal? And when I'm in my social communities, it's like, what can I bring to this that only I can bring? And when I go on dates, it's like, how can I just discover another person, maybe for just 1 hour? Which, of course, brings me full circle. Because people always ask me about my love life, you know. They want to know. And, you know, the answer is I'm still working on it, aren't we all, you know. So this is where I am right now. About 3 months ago, I went on a first date. And about 30 minutes into the date, I found myself paying attention not to whether he liked me, but how I felt in his presence. I noticed that I was like light and happy and joking. And as I reflected on the date afterward, I was like, wow, I got really excited. I'm like, look, this is how committed I am to myself. I'm not even on this date trying to like get someone to like me. You know, I'm more interested in how I feel about me than how he feels about me. Not because I'm selfish, but because the only relationship I'm ever going to have with another person is the one that I'm already having with myself. I'm just going to have it with them now. So it turned out he liked me, you know, and we're still together, and it's cool and amazing, you know, but like I've been married 3 times, so slow down. You know? But the thing is, I'm not trying to get security from him through marriage. I'm God forbid, a baby carriage. I'm only here to just be in relationship. I'm not dying to hear the words, will you marry me? Because even though those words are very powerful, and very powerful to a person like me, I don't need to hear them from him because I've already heard them from myself. And the way I see it, it's like I took myself to the top of a mountain, or maybe to the bottom of the ocean, and I got down on one knee, and I said, I'll never leave you. And now I'm married to the one person I really wanted to be with all along, myself. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diana David, and I'm a movement storyteller. And this is a ball, a red ball. Such a simple thing. But for something so simple, you could do so much with it. You could roll it. You can spin it. You could flip it. And you can balance it. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called contact juggling. And this ball changed my life. Ever since I was little, I loved and was so fascinated by how things move. With objects, machines, and even the human body. I guess that's why I dance so much. You see, I grew up always dancing. Oh yeah, oh MC Hammer, you know that one. But my dad said, that is a hobby. You need to get a career. So, I became a mechanical engineer, not electrical. It's about the same thing. You see, I thought my parents wanted me to get a job. I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. Woohoo, Edmonton! Wait for the story. I grew up in a very traditional Filipino upbringing. Their definition of success was to get a good education, stable job, and raise a family. So I pursued that. So after high school, I got a degree. And then I flew off to San Francisco for my first job as a mechanical engineer. Yeah, I'll be right there. Okay, degree, check. Career, check. 401k, check. Proud parents, double check. But after 4 years, I started to get the itch. I don't know if you've felt this before, but it's that feeling in the pit of your stomach, where you know you're just not meant to be there. Well, that feeling started to grow for days. Then it lasted for weeks, and then months. Is this it? Is this what I was going to do for the rest of my life? Analyzing heating and ventilation systems for commercial buildings and high-rise apartments? Oh, ew. So then what was I going to do? I thought back when I was 5. It was 1983. I was watching TV. And then I saw a man with a sparkly jacket slide backwards across the stage. And then everybody went nuts. I could do that. And then soon after that, I heard that my older brother was going to perform in his first piano recital. What? You get to perform on stage? So I told his piano teacher, I want to perform on stage too. Oh, you do? Well, Diana, you don't even play piano. What are you going to do? I'm going to dance. I'm going to dance Michael Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first performance ever at the age of 5, dancing to Michael Jackson's The Beat It. Rendition by Diana David. Yes, it's true. So, guess my dad saw my talents and he decided to create a Filipino dance group called the Philippine Barangay Performing Arts Society. It was great. I got a chance to learn about my culture, learn the language, and learn how dance was a form of teaching storytelling and passing down traditions. I got to connect with the community, and all the kids I hung out with became my family. What else I also learned from that was conformity. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. My parents, great life. They took care of me. They gave me a good life. They worked really hard. But it felt like there was this narrow path laid out for me all the way to success. And if I didn't go down it, I would be considered a failure. So, it was around that time when I was deciding whether to quit my job or to stay, I had a conversation with my dad. So, Dad, why did you come to Canada? Well, because I had a dream. I wanted to go abroad to raise a family. But I remember the time I didn't even talk too much because I thought I was running out of English. Dad. And then I realized was my dad's dream come true. So if my dad had dreamed, then what was my dream? That's when I started to listen to my 5-year-old self. I had to quit. And so I did. To join clown school! Yes, there's such a thing. So yes, I mean, all my life, I trained to look like everyone else. But really, I wanted to break out, and I wanted to be different. So, I thought that if the lizard man, the bearded lady, and the werewolf twins can do it, maybe quitting my engineering job and joining the circus will help me find my unique something. So, while my parents believed I was ruining my life, I was starting to strip away the expectations from the community, my parents, and even myself. It was crazy, clown school. I remember this time where we actually had to make a mistake look real. What? Like, okay, it was the hardest thing ever. I had to pretend to catch a ball and pretend like I couldn't do it. I mean, honestly, it was the hardest thing. I even remember crying so much because it was so hard for me. I couldn't do something, I wasn't good at being bad at something. Because, like, honestly, like, really, making a mistake on purpose, being raised as an engineer, being raised in a traditional background and so strict rules, failure was never an option. But I stuck through it. I learned to not take things so seriously. To remember to play again. Ow! Oh. And that mistakes can actually be material. And to find the joy in the simplest things. And then it was time for us to find our special thing in clown school, our shtick. All right. Well, some were doing magic, some were talking clubs, some were doing face painting. I mean, yeah, I could dance, but I didn't think it was enough. But it was not until I saw this street performer juggle with just one ball. I had never seen anything like it before. It was as if he was suspending time. And then I had a vision of me moonwalking with a ball. Yes! That's my shtick! Oh yeah, that's gonna be my unique something. Yeah. So, there I was in clown school. I had a ball, I had a dream, and I had no money. Because I didn't have a job. Oh yes, I had to start street performing too. Well, street performing was really good because it really allowed me to practice and get instant feedback. Well, you know, if they don't like you, they won't stay. And they sure won't pay. Well, after 2 years of this, it was great feedback and it was fun. but it just didn't feed me. So I decided to move to Vancouver. I didn't want to go back to Edmonton, that's for sure, because I wanted to play smarter, not harder. I said yes to every gig that came my way. I did birthday parties, comedy improv, and even roving characters. I did anything to get by, and I did it all. It was challenging, I have to tell you. Vancouver is expensive. I don't know, do you guys agree with me? Amen, right? But I did it. I was living off of the gigs performing. I know it was hard, and I was just scraping by. I had to move up. That's when I wrote my first grant to the Canada Council for the Arts. And I remember that day so clearly when I got the answer from them. My hands were shaking. I had never seen a check so big with my name on it. Oh, I felt like I won the lottery. Oh my God! I was going to eat, breathe, and live my art. Oh, the first person I called was my dad. Hi, Dad. I did it. He was so happy for me. For the first time in a long time, he was proud of me for something I really wanted to do. Be an artist and a performer. So with that grant, I wrote a story because I knew it was going to go into schools to put a very important message in it. I wrote myself in high school, having to show a new immigrant around school. Her name was Estrude de Bompouf. She came to Canada from the Philippines, and she was teased because she looked funny and she walked around with her best friend Albert, a chicken. Well, it was not until she shared her talent with a ball, in her case an egg, that she started to make friends and be accepted. This show has been seen and taught to kids that it's okay to be different. This was a huge breakthrough in my career. It was called Take a Closer Look. It has been seen by over 70,000 kids and adults. And I knew there was something I had found. For Estrude, this ball was something she identified with. It was her connector. It was her cool factor. It was that thing that people connected to, even though she was weird and awkward. And for me, this ball became my companion on the journey. It became a part of my identity. I was known as a girl with the red ball. This ball transformed my life. And when you connect all the dots, it becomes the stories I get to tell you today. So, let me ask you, what's your red ball? Is it a paintbrush? Is it a computer? Is it a camera? Smile, everyone. Instagram. Or your body? Or maybe just an idea to share. What would your 5-year-old self tell you it wants to do? What fascinates you? What moves you? What's that special talent that you want to share to the world, no matter what it is? I used to feel really selfish for doing something I wanted to do. But in this pursuit of happiness, I learned that if you do the things you love, it only inspires others to do the same. So, in your pursuit of happiness, I hope that you can take some of these tools I learned along the way. Number 1, remember to play! Woo-hoo! To expand your imagination. And remember that mistakes are magical. And just roll with it. Number 2, remember to practice. Take that time to show up for yourself, to find discipline and patience, for that one day it'll all just click. Yes, yes. And number 3, perform. Share yourself to the world and experience that feeling, because you are a contribution. And lastly, number 4, persevere. To never give up in writing the story of your life. This ball and I have been together for almost 10 years. But every time I pick it up, it always feels like we've locked eyeballs again. All I know is that this ball has changed my life, so I can live in a beautiful city where I can every day be able to perform. I'm able to teach, and I'm able to travel around the world doing whatever the heck I want to do. When I was 5, I wanted to be Michael Jackson. I didn't know. I just had to be myself. I know that today I can really truly speak from my heart and say that I am living my dream. Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you have the balls to follow yours. I'm Diana David, and always remember, do what moves you.
Use of sign language by the interpreter. We've seen that DeafSA says they have received thousands of complaints from people worldwide. Well, joining me now to talk about this is our very own sign interpreter, Thelma Kotzer, who was doing the job at the same time that the other sign language interpreter was. But he, of course, was just a couple of steps away from the most powerful men and women in the world on the stage, and apparently not doing the right job. Thelma, let's talk about this. Well, it's nice to speak to you. I see you all the time, but it's nice to have a conversation with you.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be on the other side of the interview this time around.
Very different experience.
I think it must be very strange for people to hear that I actually have a voice.
I know, it is. It is. All right, now, let's talk about this outcry. Is it well-founded? Is it right that people are upset with the sign language and what was taking place on the day?
Absolutely. I, for obvious reasons, did not see it when it really happened at the time, since I was working. I was interpreting on camera. But I have had the privilege to watch YouTube videos about the actual interpretation. And it's not worthy of being called an interpretation. that was not an interpretation. We said earlier in Light Note that he was doing the Macarena. If only it was that. It's intelligible. You cannot understand the thing that he was doing. It was like, if I had to sum it up and say,
please do.
it was is what he was saying.
The entire time,
Yes.
through all of the speeches.
Yes. He did not even make use of the name sign, the very famous name sign for Nelson Mandela, which is this. He did not even know that. There are name signs for Obama. In fact, if the speaker introduces another speaker, you would have to finger spell the name. There was no finger spelling happening. There was just nothing.
I mean, there were lots of comments from individuals that were watching the SABC sign language, and I know that you were on. Were you on during Barack Obama's speech?
That's correct.
I saw you there on. It was difficult for me because I was at the stadium, so I wasn't watching.
Yes.
I wasn't watching what was happening. But what you were doing and what the sign language on the stage were doing were completely different. And so people who didn't understand. There you go. That's him. What is he saying?
I have nothing to say because nothing is being said there. He is just making gestures. He's just making gestures of gestures, which does not make any sense. There's absolutely no grammar in what he's doing. The grammar of South African Sign Language, and any signed language for that matter, lies on the face.
Yeah.
So if I had to say, would you like a cup of tea? I would raise my eyebrows, just as you would raise your voice. Would you like tea? Can you hear the voice goes up?
Yeah.
The eyebrows lift.
Yeah,
because that's
facial
a yes,
expressions.
no question, right?
Yeah.
So for a WH question, the eyebrows would be lowered. But you can see that man, there's just no facial expression happening. It just is ludicrous. How he landed up there, but who decided if he was even interviewed? We wouldn't know. We just wouldn't know how he got there.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're still trying to find out, because it seems that the blame is being shifted from one person to the next person to the next person. We actually just don't know how he got there. So we've got some more footage here of there he is. Let's just have a look at this, and perhaps maybe you can help us out. Okay, just be patient. This is the footage that we have. That's Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the AU chairperson. That's the family when they were talking. Okay, there's the sign language interpreter now. Oh, he's just at the corner of the screen there. Anything?
No, but he seems to be repeating the same hand gesture over and over again. You know, it just... And there's no fluidity in what his movements... I mean, in his movements, there's just no fluidity.
There we go. That's a better shot of him.
There's nothing there.
So he's just saying
it looks like it. There's no meaning in what he's doing.
Oh
There's
my
just
goodness.
no meaning.
This is.
I wish you could have had a deaf person here
to actually
to
say
tell you
this.
what they are understanding.
You know why this. I mean, I know that there were so many tweets that were happening at the time, and the deaf community were saying, what is going on there? But I think one of the most prominent tweets came from Molly Maitland. Now she's a Hollywood actress that has a massive following around the world. She's a deaf Hollywood actress, and she was watching this and saying, hang on a second, that is not sign language. What is this guy doing? And then, of course, it spread like wildfire.
Lily, and on the one hand, I must say, you know, I'm terribly sorry that this had happened to the deaf community, because it's a terrible injustice. Why the deaf community did not have access to this. In South Africa, perhaps they did, with qualified South African Sign Language interpreters being on SABC Live, which makes it a little bit better. However, on the other hand, I must say, I'm very grateful that this has actually happened.
Yeah.
Because that is the plight of many deaf South Africans in the whole country. Deaf people do not necessarily have access to healthcare services. They go to the doctor. They are not provided with professional South African Sign Language interpreting services. So they go to the doctor. I mean, would you like to go to a Russian doctor if you do not understand any Russian?
Absolutely. No,
Well, would you go without an interpreter?
No, not
Would you
at all.
like to pay for that interpreter?
No.
Yeah. So why should deaf people be subjected to that? And the very inferior quality of South African Sign Language interpretation that we are seeing out there, every person